The massive crystalline dome of Concordia Station floated silently in the void between star systems, its transparent walls reflecting the light of distant suns. Inside, the emergency council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as 12 different alien species gathered around the central holographic display. The air recyclers worked overtime to accommodate the various atmospheric needs of the assembled delegates. Ambassador Velthera of the Zephyrian hegemony stood at the center of the chamber, her 4 golden eyes scanning the faces of her colleagues. Her blue-scaled skin seemed to shimmer with anxiety as she activated the holographic recordings. The other ambassadors leaned forward in their various chairs, seats, and hovering platforms, each designed for their unique physiologies. "What you are about to hear," Velthara began, her voice carrying a tremor that surprised even herself, was intercepted from human deep space communications over the past 3 solar cycles. Our best linguists and code breakers have been analyzing these transmissions. The first recording began to play. 2 human voices speaking in calm, measured tones that seemed almost casual. The translation matrix rendered their words into the common galactic tongue. "Protocol 7 parameters are within acceptable ranges," said the first voice. "Resource redistribution phase can commence on schedule." "Confirmed," replied the second voice. "All colonial assets are in position. The harvest season preparations are complete." A collective shiver ran through the assembled delegates. Commander Zixdal of the Hegemony Fleet, a towering reptilian creature with razor-sharp teeth, leaned forward on his powerful legs. His claws scraped against the metal floor as he spoke. "What disturbs me most is not the content," he growled, "but the tone. These humans speak of what sounds like galaxy-wide operations as if they are discussing crop rotation on a farming world." Admiral Krivash of the Stellar Concordance, her insectoid features clicking with agitation, added, "Our intelligence networks have been monitoring human expansion for decades. They appear to be a young species, newly arrived to interstellar travel. These transmissions suggest something far different." The second recording began. This time, the voices were different, but the casual tone remained the same. "Legacy protocols are showing green across all sectors," reported a female human voice. "The gardening phase has exceeded expectations." "Should we proceed to the next stage?" "Not yet," came the reply. "The younger species are still developing. A few more cycles should be sufficient. Remember, patience has always been our greatest strength." The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. Several delegates exchanged worried glances. The hegemony had spent centuries building their military might, believing themselves to be the dominant force in this region of space. The idea that humans might possess capabilities beyond their understanding was deeply unsettling. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Jinho Kim sat in his small office on the 37th floor of the Seoul Deep Space Communications Center. The building was unremarkable from the outside, just another glass and steel structure in the bustling city. But deep beneath its foundations lay communication, equipment that could reach across the galaxy in ways that alien scientists were only beginning to understand. Jinho was a quiet man in his 40s, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a simple white shirt and dark pants, looking more like a university professor than someone who coordinated communications across dozens of star systems. His desk was cluttered with data tablets and coffee cups, and a small plant sat on the windowsill, catching the afternoon sunlight. The door to his office opened, and Dr. Hyjin Park entered carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. She was younger than Jinho, perhaps in her early 30s, with short black hair and an expression of mild confusion. She set 1 cup on his desk and settled into the chair across from him. "The outer colonies are sending some unusual requests," she said, sipping her coffee. "They want updates on something called legacy protocols, and keep asking if the gardening phase is complete." Ginho looked up from his data tablet and nodded slowly. "The colonies are getting restless. They have been waiting for a long time. Tell them to be patient. The harvest season approaches, and everything must be ready." "Should I send the standard response about routine maintenance schedules?" Hyjin asked. "That'll be sufficient," Ginho replied, returning to his work. "The younger species are not ready yet. they still believe in conquest and domination. A few more years of observation should tell us everything we need to know. Neither human noticed the small device hidden in the wall behind Jinho's desk. It had been placed there months ago by Zephyrian intelligence operatives, designed to monitor human communications. But as the two humans continued their conversation, the device began to spark and smoke, its circuits overwhelmed by signals it was never designed to intercept. Finally gave up with a small pop and died. The aliens listening from Concordia Station lost their connection to Earth at that moment, leaving them with more questions than answers, and a growing sense that humanity was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Dr. Minho, Lee rubbed his tired eyes and leaned back in his chair, the holographic star chart floating above his desk had been his companion for 15 years, each point of light representing a world he had carefully surveyed and mapped. The Galactic Cartography Institute in Busan had given him the task of creating the most complete map of habitable worlds in their sector of the galaxy. He had thrown himself into the work with dedication. His office was filled with the tools of his trade. Star charts covered every wall, mathematical calculations scrawled in his neat handwriting-filled notebooks stacked on shelves, and three-dimensional models of planetary systems rotated slowly on various tables. The smell of coffee and the hum of computers created a comfortable background to his work. But today, something was different. As Minho stared at the holographic display, a strange feeling washed over him. The pattern of worlds, the distances between them, the careful arrangement of star types and planetary compositions, it all seemed somehow familiar, like a half-remembered dream. Sujin, he called to his research partner, who was working at a desk across the room. Come look at this. Dr. Sujin Choi was a brilliant woman in her late 30s, with sharp eyes and an analytical mind that had helped solve many mapping puzzles over the years. She had been Minho's partner for nearly a decade, and they worked together like a well-oiled machine. She looked up from her own calculations and walked over to his desk. What is it? She asked, settling into the chair. Beside him, Minho manipulated the holographic controls, rotating the three-dimensional map so they could see it from different angles. Look at the arrangement of these worlds, the distances between them, the star types they orbit, the planetary compositions and atmospheric conditions. Sujin studied the display carefully, her brow furrowing in concentration. Slowly, her eyes began to widen as she saw what Minho was seeing. This is not random, she whispered. Someone deliberately placed these worlds in this exact sequence. The mathematical precision is too perfect to be natural. Minho nodded grimly. And look at this. He highlighted Earth on the display, showing how it connected to all the other worlds in the pattern. Earth is not just another world in the sequence. It is the final point, the keystone that holds the entire structure together. The implications hit them both at the same time. Everything they had believed about human expansion into space, about their species being newcomers to the galaxy, suddenly seemed wrong. The pattern suggested something far older and more complex. How long has this pattern existed? Sujin asked quietly. According to the geological surveys, these worlds have been habitable for millions of years, Minho replied. But they were, all discovered by different species at different times. The Zephyrians found their worlds first, then the hegemony found theirs, and so on. Or maybe, Sujin said slowly, they were guided to find them. At that exact moment, halfway across the galaxy, strange things were happening on worlds that had been quiet for centuries. On Kepler 440b, the mining colony of the Zephyrian hegemony was experiencing something unprecedented. Workers reported that crystalline structures were emerging from the ground in perfect geometric patterns, as if the planet itself was responding to some unknown signal. The colonial administrator, a nervous Zephyrian named Velkoth, stood in the main mining pit watching in amazement as more crystals pushed through the soil. Each crystal was perfectly formed, with smooth surfaces that seemed to glow with inner light. But what worried him most was the symbol carved into each crystal, a simple circle with radiating lines that meant nothing to Zephyrian culture. On Proxima Centauri b, the hegemony's archaeological team was making similar discoveries. Ancient ruins that had been buried for millennia were suddenly shifting and revealing themselves. Massive stone structures rose from the ground, their surfaces covered with the same mysterious symbol. The team leader, Commander Zixanel, ordered his scientists to document everything, but he could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. Similar events were happening on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Every species that had established colonies was reporting the same phenomenon, ancient artifacts appearing, ruins emerging from the ground, and always the same symbol repeated endlessly. Back on Earth, Minho and Sujin were comparing their star chart with historical records when Sujin made another discovery that made her hands tremble. "Minho," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "look at this." She had pulled up an image from Earth's ancient Korean cultural archives. It showed a traditional Taguk symbol, a simple circle with radiating lines representing the balance and harmony of the universe. The symbol that had been part of Korean culture for thousands of years. "It is the same symbol," Minho said, staring at the display. "Exactly the same." They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of their discovery settling over them. Humanity was not the young species that had recently discovered space travel. They were connected to something much older, something that had been shaping the galaxy for millions of years. "What do we do with this information?" Sujin asked. Minho looked at her with serious eyes. "We need to contact the Deep Space Communications Center. Someone needs to know that the pattern is complete and the awakening has begun." The mining drill bit through the last layer of rock with a grinding screech that echoed through the deep. Tunnels of Kepler 442b. Mining supervisor Dong-Soo Park wiped the sweat from his forehead and signaled for his team to stop the machinery. They had been drilling for 3 months, following a rich vein of rare metals that seemed to lead deeper and deeper into the planet's core. Dong-Soo was a sturdy man in his 50s, with calloused hands and the kind of practical wisdom that came from 30 years of mining work. He had volunteered for this colonial assignment because the pay was good and his children needed money for university back on Earth. The work was hard, but he took pride in providing resources that would help humanity spread among the stars. "Supervisor?" Park called his assistant, Dejin Kim, from the drilling platform. "The drill is broken through into some kind of empty space. There is a chamber down there." The Jin was young, maybe 25, and this was her first assignment off Earth. She had studied geology and mining engineering. Nothing had prepared her for the strange things they sometimes found on alien worlds. She checked her instruments with nervous fingers. "How big is the chamber?" Dong-Soo asked, climbing up to look at her readings. "Very big," she replied. "The sensors cannot find the far walls," is the supervisor. ... There is air down there. Clean air. With oxygen levels perfect for humans." Dong-Soo frowned. That was impossible. There were 3 kilometers beneath the surface of a planet that had never supported human life. There should be no breathable air at this depth. "Get the rope and climbing gear," he ordered. "We are going down to investigate." 20 minutes later, Dong-Soo descended through the hole they had drilled, his helmet light cutting through the darkness below. As his feet touched solid ground, he looked around in amazement. The chamber was enormous, stretching far beyond what his light could reach. But what shocked him most were the walls. They were covered in writing. Row after row of carefully carved characters ran from floor to ceiling in perfect lines. The characters were familiar. The Jin he called up through his radio. "Come down here. Bring the recording equipment." When the Jin joined him, she gasped at the sight of the carved walls. "Supervisor, these are Korean characters." "But that cannot be right. This planet has never had human visitors before us." "Look closer," Dong-Soo said, running his fingers over the carved letters. "These characters are Korean, but they are old. Very old. Some of these writing styles have not been used for thousands of years." They walked deeper into the chamber, their lights revealing more and more of the ancient writing. The ceiling was supported by massive stone pillars, each one carved with intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story. The floor was made of smooth, black stone that reflected their lights like a mirror. At the center of the chamber stood a single pillar that was different from the others. It was made of black stone that seemed to absorb light, and as they approached, They could see that it pulsed with a faint inner glow, like a heartbeat made of light. "This technology is beyond anything we know," the Jinn whispered. "How can stone produce light?" Dongsu stepped closer to the pillar. As he did, the pulsing light grew brighter, and suddenly a voice spoke from within the stone. The voice was clear and strong, and it spoke in perfect Korean. "Welcome home, children of the gardeners. The long sleep is ending." Both humans jumped, back in shock. Jin grabbed Dongsu's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Who are you?" Dongsu asked, his voice shaking slightly. "I am Archivist," the voice replied. "I have been waiting for you to return. Your people have been gone for so long that I began to wonder if they would ever wake up." "Our people?" the Jinn asked. "We are the first humans to visit this world," Archivist said gently. "You are the first humans to remember this world. But your ancestors built this place long before your current civilization began. They built many such places across the galaxy." The pillar's light grew brighter, and suddenly the walls around them began to glow as well. Images appeared in the stone, showing scenes from the distant past. Dongsu and the Jinn saw vast cities among the stars, enormous ships traveling between worlds, and humans working alongside alien species in peace and cooperation. "Your ancestors ruled a great empire," Archivist continued. "They were wise and powerful, but they grew tired of constant war. Other species always wanted to fight, to conquer, to destroy. So your people made a choice. They would sleep and let the galaxy grow without them." "Sleep?" Dongsu asked. "They reduced their civilization to a single world, Earth. They hid their technology and their knowledge, and they waited. They seeded the galaxy with life, hoping that, when they woke up, they would find a wiser universe." The images on the walls changed, showing the careful placement of life on different worlds, the guidance of younger species, and the patient watching from Earth as civilizations rose and fell. "The test phase is complete," Archivist said. "Been monitoring the younger species for millennia. They've chosen their path. They still prefer war to peace, conquest to cooperation. It is time for the gardeners to return and restore order to the galaxy." Dongsu and the Jinn looked at each other in amazement. Everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe had just been turned upside down. Admiral Valthera stood on the bridge of her flagship, the mighty dreadnought Stellar Dominion, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the main viewport. Her 4 golden eyes reflected the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Behind her, the tactical display showed the positions of her fleet, 200 of the hegemony's finest warships, armed with weapons that could crack planets. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, "we will emerge from hyperspace in 30 seconds. All ships are ready for battle." Valthera nodded, her blue-scaled skin gleaming under the bridge lights. The plan was simple. Earth was defended by only a few dozen primitive satellites and a handful of orbital stations. The humans had no real military fleet, no advanced weapons, no experience with large-scale warfare. This would be over quickly. "Emerge from hyperspace," she ordered. "Begin immediate attack on all human defense platforms." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charging for the opening strike. But what they saw made Valthara's blood run cold. Earth's orbital space was filled with hundreds of structures that had not been there in any of their intelligence reports. Massive platforms bristling with weapons, shield generators the size of small moons, and defensive arrays that stretched from Earth to Luna and beyond. Every satellite they had thought was primitive was now revealing advanced weapon systems. Every space station was unfolding like a flower, showing defensive capabilities that surpassed anything the hegemony had ever built. "Admiral," her tactical officer stammered, "I am reading energy signatures beyond our measurement scale. These defenses are beyond our technology." Deep beneath the bustling city of Seoul, in a command center that had been hidden for centuries, President Jae-woo Kim watched the displays with calm eyes. The chamber was enormous, filled with technology that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. Holographic displays showed the tactical situation in space, while other screens monitored human colonies across the galaxy. President Kim was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and the kind of quiet dignity that came from years of leadership. He wore a simple dark suit, but around his neck hung a pendant bearing the ancient Taguk symbol. He had been president for 8 years, but only today had he learned the true nature of his office. "Mr. President," said General So-Young Lee, "his defense coordinator, the Hegemony fleet, has emerged from hyperspace. They appear to be ... confused." General Lee was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, with short black hair and a military bearing that commanded respect. She had spent her career preparing for conflicts that never came, never understanding that she was actually preparing for this moment. "Show me the fleet status," President Kim ordered. The displays around them came alive with information. Across human space, every colony, every outpost, every merchant vessel was suddenly revealing its true nature. The peaceful research station at Alpha Centauri unfolded massive shield generators. The mining colony at Kepler 44 to be deployed weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets. Transport ships that had been carrying cargo for decades suddenly bristled. "With defensive systems, the Hegemony fleet is pulling back," General Lee reported, her voice filled with amazement. "Their admiral is requesting immediate communication." "Let them wait," President Kim said calmly. "Show me the full network status." A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared before them, showing every human presence as a glowing point of light. As they watched, the lights began to connect, forming a vast network that stretched across dozens of star systems. Every human colony, every trading post, every research station was part of a single interconnected defense system. "Sir," General Lee said quietly, "I have been your defense coordinator for 5 years. I thought I understood our military capabilities, but this is beyond anything I imagined." President Kim smiled. "Of course it is. We have been preparing for this moment for 3,000 years. We just did not remember we were preparing." Walked to the central command console and placed his hand on a scanner. The device recognized his genetic pattern, and suddenly more displays activated around the room. Ancient records appeared, showing the careful planning that had gone into every human expansion into space. "Every colony we established was placed in a strategic location," he explained. "Every trade route was designed to support the network. Every peaceful research station was actually a fortress waiting to be activated. Our ancestors planned this before they went to sleep." On the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Velthara watched in horror as her tactical displays showed the true extent of human defenses. Her fleet, which had seemed so powerful moments before, was now surrounded by weapon systems that could destroy them, all in seconds. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we are receiving surrender demands from 17 different human commanders. They want us to withdraw immediately or face destruction." Velthara looked at her tactical display 1. More time. The human defense network was so advanced that her ships would not last 5 minutes in a real battle.
Everything
The Hegemony had believed about human military capabilities was wrong. "Signal the fleet," she ordered, her voice heavy with defeat. "We are withdrawing. Send a message to Hegemony Command. Tell them that humanity is not what we thought. Tell them that we have made a terrible mistake." As the Hegemony fleet turned and fled, President Kim watched from his command center with satisfaction. The test was over. The galaxy's younger species had chosen aggression over wisdom, and now they would learn the consequences. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the great chamber of Concordia Station with an urgency that had never been seen before. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy had gathered, their faces showing a mixture of fear, confusion, and barely controlled panic. The failed attack on Earth had sent shockwaves through the galactic community, and now everyone wanted answers. Ambassador Velthara sat in her designated seat, her 4 golden eyes downcast with shame. The one-sprout admiral of the Hegemony fleet had returned from Earth with her tail between her legs, bringing news that no one wanted to believe. The humans were not the weak, primitive species they had all assumed. They were something far more dangerous. The chamber's central holographic projector flickered to life, and slowly an image began to form. The assembled delegates leaned forward, expecting to see a human military commander or perhaps their president. Instead, They saw something that made them all freeze in their seats. The hologram showed an elderly Korean woman, her white hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore plain robes of deep blue, the kind that suggested wisdom rather than wealth. Her face was lined with age, but her dark eyes held a depth that seemed to span millennia. When she spoke, her voice was gentle, but carried an authority that made even the most powerful delegates feel small. "I am Archivist Prime," she began. And somehow her words were perfectly translated into every language represented in the chamber. "I speak for the gardeners, the ones you call humanity." The silence in the chamber was complete. Even the soft hum of the life support systems seemed too quiet in the presence of this ancient being. "Long ago," she continued, "we grew weary of the endless cycle of war that consumed the galaxy. Species after species chose violence over understanding, conquest over cooperation. We had the power to end all conflict, but we chose a different path. We withdrew from galactic affairs, hoping that in our absence, the younger species would learn wisdom." Admiral Krivash of the Stellar Concordance, her insectoid features clicking nervously, found her voice. You have been watching us?" "All this time," Archivist Prime nodded slowly. "We seeded the galaxy with life, guided the development of civilizations, and watched from afar as you grew. We hoped that when we returned we would find a galaxy at peace. Instead, we found the same old patterns. It's the same hunger for war." Commander Zixtel of the Hegemony leaned forward on his powerful legs. "The attack on Earth was a defensive action. We believed humans were a threat to galactic stability." "You believed what you chose to believe," Archivist Prime replied. "You saw a young species expanding into space and assumed they were like you, driven by greed and ambition. You never considered that they might be something else entirely." Hologram flickered, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images from across the galaxy. Every species present could see their own worlds, their own fleets, their own colonies. But now they could also see the subtle signs they had missed, the careful placement of human settlements, the strategic positioning of trade routes, the quiet monitoring stations that had been watching everything. "You have been tested," Archivist Prime said, her voice carrying a weight of sadness. "For 3,000 years, we have watched and waited. We hoped you would choose peace. Instead, you chose war. You are not ready for freedom." The chamber erupted. In confused murmurs and frightened whispers, several delegates began to speak at once, but a new voice cut through the noise. "The time for discussion is over." All eyes turned to see Commander Humin Shin step forward. She was a woman in her 40s, wearing the simple uniform of the Earth Defense Force. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her dark eyes held the same ancient wisdom as Archivist Prime. Around her neck, she wore a pendant bearing the Tegyuk symbol. "I am Commander Shin," she announced. "I speak for humanity in all matters concerning the galaxy. The age of unguided expansion is over. We return not as conquerors but as custodians." Ambassador Valthera found her voice. "What does this mean for our peoples, our civilizations, Commander?" Shin looked at her with eyes that held both compassion and steel. "It means you will learn. Those who choose peace will find us to be gentle teachers. Those who choose war will discover why our ancestors ruled the galaxy for so long. And if we refuse," demanded Admiral Krivash, "then you will join the dozens of species who made that choice before you." Commander Shin replied quietly, "Their names are remembered only in our archives." The holographic image of Archivist Prime began to fade, but her voice remained strong. "This is not conquest. This is parenting. The galaxy's children have proven they cannot be trusted with dangerous toys. The adults have returned to restore order." As the transmission ended, the chamber fell into a silence unlike any in galactic history. Every delegate sat frozen, processing the magnitude of what they had just learned. The humans were not newcomers to the galaxy. They were the galaxy's former rulers, awakening from a long sleep to find their children had learned nothing. Outside the station, across the galaxy, every species began to receive the same message. The gardeners had returned, and the age of endless war was over. For those wise enough to accept guidance, a new era of peace awaited. For those who chose to resist, only silence remained. The galaxy would never be the same.